You've probably seen a lot of content talking about how powerful Yelan is or how useful she is for so many teams, but a lot of the time that's not enough. For most people, it's important to pick and choose which characters to pull for, and often their strength in battle is way down the list when it comes to deciding whether to go for it. At least that's how it is for me. Personally, I thought I was going to skip Yelan. I was confident. I had zero interest in her. I would not spend my primos on her banner. I was wrong. Yelan debuted in version 2.7. Based on the early drip marketing and teasers, I wasn't even remotely interested in her, and even her trailer and character demo didn't convince me that I'd want her. In fact, I was very confident I'd be skipping her and saving hard for the upcoming banners instead. It was rumored that 3 characters I was desperately wanting would be coming soon: Klee, Kazuha, and Yoimiya, so I really needed to keep saving. Her bow, however, I had my eye on. I had actually started playing Genshin because they added Aloy. Horizon Zero Dawn was my favorite game of all time and it helped me through some tough times, so crossover into Genshin was the push for me to finally give it a go. My Aloy was probably stronger than you'd expect, hitting up to 200k damage on her burst when everything lined up right, but despite that she was still falling behind. My Aloy deserved the best, and Yelan's signature weapon looked like it would take her to the next level. I had already saved up a decent amount of primos, so the moment the banner dropped, I tried my chances. I got lucky. Aqua Simulacra came home at soft pity. After getting the bow, I went to do all the character trials for the free mos and all my plans went out the window. From the very first moment of Yelan's character trial, I was absolutely sold on her gameplay. I had never had so much fun using a character's abilities as I did with Yelan. Zooming around with her skill makes you feel so fast and unstoppable, and I love that it knocks enemies off their feet and pulls them all together slightly. Her burst is incredibly powerful, and her normal attack animations are smooth and fluid. I couldn't believe it! I did her trial a good 20 times in a row, and despite the fact that she's really designed to be an off-field DPS, I barely swapped away from her. I knew there was no way I'd be skipping her. She cast her lifeline and got me. 3 times. I have no regrets. While Yelan's aesthetic didn't particularly jump at me, it did have its positives. I liked the cohesive color scheme and relative simplicity coupled with all the fine detail, but her outfit wasn't an instant obsession like, say, Ningguang's Lantern Rite outfit was. It's clear someone at Hoyo has a thing for armpits, and Yelan is clearly their ultimate armpit mummy. After meeting her in-game, I loved her chill and laid-back confidence, which was a refreshing contrast to all the overworked, tired, workaholic women of Liyue. She chooses to let the randomness of dice decide how she spends her time and loves a good nap. She's an intelligence agent with several secret identities and a mysterious personality that leaves you guessing where her true loyalties lie. The truth is, they probably lie with herself and what she perceives as the truth. So, I pulled Yelan pretty much entirely because her gameplay felt just like such a perfect fit for me. Putting that aside, what else stands out? Another important facet for me is how easy she is to build. Obviously, I had no choice but to give her the Aqua Simulacra, sorry Aloy, and I didn't even have to farm for artifacts. Her damage scales based on her HP, and I don't know about you, but I find HP to be abundant in my artifacts, even more so than its slightly higher drop rates would predict. The ever-popular emblem set is perfect fit for her, so I was able to build a monster with 0 effort. Aside from her signature bow, she does have a lot of viable weapons. Favonia's warbow is a popular option. Sacrificial bow essentially gives you a free C1 due to the extra skill cost. The stringless is surprisingly strong on her, and even the 3-star recurve bow is viable thanks to its whopping 46.9% HP substat. For artifacts, she's similarly flexible since she benefits from anything which boosts her HP, hydro damage, or her burst damage. 4-piece emblem with high ER stat is probably the most common build, but you can give her any of the 2-piece sets with hydro damage, HP bonus, burst damage bonus, ER bonus, and she'll still be great. As always with artifacts, it matters far more that the pieces are actually good and that she ends up with good balance across all the important stats than it does to equip a full set. In my experience, her first stat priority is as much HP as possible. Over 35k to 40k is common goal, then upwards of 200 ER depending on the weapon, and only then focus on crit rate and crit damage. EM rolls are generally worthwhile, though not really something to actively look for. My Yelan actually has a HP circlet, since it has a great crit substat, and according to both my intense testing and a couple of online damage calculators, it results in a noticeably higher damage than any of my crit circlets. Rapids. I also have Yelan on my free-to-play account, and she's fantastic there too, despite having a build focused entirely on base damage without much crit. Another big positive to Yelan is her versatility. Hydro is arguably the most useful element in Genshin due to it being central to so many of the most popular reactions, and she does an excellent job as a Hydro applier, which makes her valuable in a whole host of situations. Let's look at her kit to see why she's so useful. The central part of her kit is her burst, which provides an absolute ton of damage, consistent Hydro application, and a very strong buff. While her burst is active, every time any character in your team uses their normal attacks, Yelan applies Hydro and deals damage, very much like our favorite water boy Xingqiu. Her burst buff is powerful. It boosts the damage of your active character for the entire burst duration, and the strength of the boost slowly increases throughout. It starts at a 3.5% and goes up every second. By the end of her 15-second long burst, it provides 50% more damage. In reality, of course, this evens out to be a lower bonus over time, but still a very welcome one, and you can get some spectacular results if you really time things right. This works extremely well in a whole host of teams. Pretty much any team where you'd like to trigger a Hydro-related reaction is one which can rely on her. I regularly use her in my favorite Hyper Bloom and Vaporize teams, and she's also great for Burgeon, Electrocharged, and Freeze teams, so I tend to either not focus on those reactions as much or rely on other Hydro characters when it comes to Freeze. It's great to have her as an option for Freeze teams though, in case I want to add a bit more damage to the mix. Her skill is also very useful. It fires off a lifeline which allows her to move very quickly, and any enemies you run past get marked by the lifeline. When the lifeline expires, either after 3 seconds or if you jump, sprint, attack, manually cancel or get staggered, it explodes and deals damage to enemies, while also generating 4 Hydro particles. I find that her skill is more useful than it might seem at first glance. When the lifeline explodes, it staggers any enemies which have been marked and pulls them a little closer together. This small amount of crowd control can make a noticeable difference against large mobs of enemies. It's also incredibly useful for saving time when enemies spawn off on the other side of the abyss. The final part of her kit, which I don't use all that much, is her breakthrough state, which shortens the charging time of her next aim shot by 80% and also makes it explode on hit and deal AoE Hydro damage. During battle, every enemy you mark with your lifeline has a 34% chance to trigger the breakthrough state, plus this state automatically triggers when she spends 5 seconds out of combat. I only really use the breakthrough barb in co-op or out of battle to take out small enemies or as a first shot at a larger enemy. In solo play, it's rare to take the time to do aimed shots in the middle of a battle. Overall, her role is very much an off-field sub-DPS character, which is always a highly sought-after role for many teams, and her element makes her even more useful. Which leads on to the next question. If you have a strong Xingqiu, isn't Yelan a bit unnecessary? When her kit was announced, many said that they would skip Yelan because she just looked like a 5-star version of Xingqiu. This was a rather short-sighted take, since Xingqiu was already one of the strongest and most sought-after characters in the game. If you have Xingqiu and don't feel the need for someone else so similar, then of course that's a valid reason to skip Yelan, but having 2 Xingqius in your account can very much be a good thing. While they are very similar, they do provide slightly different trade-offs. In terms of their burst's primary use, depending on your constellations, Xingqiu applies a little more Hydro than a C0 Yelan does, but his damage potential is a fair bit lower. If you have his second constellation, he provides a 15% Hydro resistance reduction, which would have similar benefits to Yelan's buff. The most significant difference between the two is that Xingqiu's skill creates floating rain swords which swirl around your active character. While these swords are present, they work as a pseudo-shield, reducing the damage your character takes and increasing their resistance to interruption. When the swords expire, they also heal the active character a small amount. Overall, Yelan is the more attacking option, while Xingqiu has more defensive benefits. For the most part, the two characters are pretty interchangeable, but those slight differences do make a difference in some teams. For example, a favorite Yoimiya team of mine with Thoma and Yunjin is far more comfortable with Xingqiu than Yelan because his defensive and healing utility makes a big difference due to the lack of dedicated healer. There are some fun teams built around using both of them together. A perfect example of this is Hu Tao team, which lets you vaporize to her heart's content. But it can be really nice to have them both, just so you can put one on each side of the abyss. So, to recap, I fell head over heels for Yelan, got her C2 straight away, and rely on her heavily in tons of teams, which I use to beat the hardest content in the game. She's absolutely one of my favorites. But what if you can only afford her C0? Would she still be as good? And what about her higher constellations? Am I planning to go for her C6? I actually have a lot of experience with C0 Yelan since that's as far as we went for her on my alt account. She's still incredibly strong at C0, and if you have a sacrificial bow, especially a highly refined one, you do essentially get a free C1 constellation. This is what I use on my alt account, and I've been very happy with her there. Even though it's a fairly young account and I've not spent too much time on it outside of keeping up with events, it's already able to get 30 stars in the Abyss, and a large part of that is due to Yelan. That said, the C1 is a very good quality of life upgrade, and it's worth aiming for if you have the spare primos. It lets you zoom around with her a little more, perfect for exploration, generates extra particles to help with her energy needs, and deals extra damage. The rest of her constellations increase her damage to an absurd degree, and I'm gonna be honest, I think C6 Yelan kinda trivializes the game. For that reason, despite her being my main played character, I will not be taking her any further. I find that the game already offers very little challenge for the most part, and if I want to bring my Yelan along, any fight already feels pretty easy. I can't even imagine how easy it would be if she was maxed out, and I don't want to have to either rip apart her build or just never play with her if I want to enjoy any combat at all. That said, this is not to shame those who have maxed out their Yelan, or any other character for that matter. Everyone can and should build and play their account how they best see fit, and concentrate on whatever makes them enjoy the game as much as possible. I'm just giving Hoya some side-eye for some of the more recent higher constellations on 5 stars, and their effect on the gameplay and balance. Overall, Yelan's an absolutely fantastic character, and it's well worth pulling for even if she doesn't capture you quite the same way she did me. She's powerful, versatile, easy to build, and makes exploration more convenient. If you're at all tempted, you won't regret it. Until next time!